Hey everyone, Adam here. So in this video, I want to look at paralysis by analysis, but more from a long-term perspective. So these are projects that you might be considering if you want to do, or maybe it's like a big shift in your career or a big move or whatever it happens to be. But I just want to talk about some of the pitfalls that may come up when you're trying to figure out if you want to do some of these things. Now in last week's video I focused more on the short term and like I said in this particular video I want to focus more on the long term things that you don't really need to rush through but again still trying to avoid that paralysis by analysis situation. Now at some point you're going to have to make one of three decisions. It's basically going to boil down to yes, I'm going to do this, no, I am not, or no, I am not going to do this, but I may want to reevaluate this later. So if you run into a situation in your life that you are completely overwhelmed right now in your life, and someone comes to you with a project, or you want to do a project yourself, whether it be maybe another hobby or something, and you immediately say no because you're overwhelmed, that is perfectly healthy. I think that is great. But if it's something that you might be interested in, you may want to consider putting that into the no, but I will reevaluate in the future. Now, obviously, if you have no interest in the project whatsoever, you just say no. It just falls into that category of no, I'm not going to do this, and you just move on. The area that I want to focus in on for this video is more of, you're interested in the project. There's really no, maybe time constraint or anything associated with the project. Maybe it's you looking to do another hobby or something. But what ends up happening is because of all the research that you're doing, you kind of want to do it, or you're not sure, you're kind of waffling, and then you end up spending weeks or months or years just trying to figure out if you're going to do this project or trying to execute on this project. That is something that I want to focus in on this video and try to help you avoid those situations, because I don't think that that's very long-term, that's very productive, and it's probably something that you want to avoid. So what might contribute to that scenario of paralysis by analysis or not executing? So there's a couple of scenarios where this may manifest itself. You might be looking for that perfect time to start. And again, there is some common sense with this, and you got to figure out what the balance is for you. But give a quick example. Let's say you're looking to execute on purchasing a new computer, right? Let's say it's just a MacBook for the sake of this example, and that in about 2 months from now, when you're looking to buy this MacBook, that maybe a new generation MacBook may be on the horizon. So in that situation, again, it's up to you. It may be preferable to time that where, you say like, okay, I know I'm going to buy a MacBook, but I want to see what the next generation has to offer. And it's only 2 months. I'm in no hurry. Okay, great. So you've kind of made that decision. And then with that information, you can figure out like, okay, I'm either going to, one, purchase the new MacBook because it has XYZ technology that I think will be helpful. Or at that point, maybe you'll say like, once that information is known, then maybe I'll get a discount on the older model because, maybe I'm perfectly happy with the older model and I don't need the latest and greatest. But on the flip side, if, that MacBook isn't going to be released from a year and a half from now, that might be, a little bit excessive, especially if you're looking to buy a computer now in the more near term. So again, I don't have that answer for you. Just something to keep in mind to make sure it's a reasonable time frame, depending on what your needs are. Another example of paralysis by analysis is a situation where let's say you're looking to switch careers, and let's say you're lucky. You're in a field that has lots and lots of opportunity, and you've applied to 40 different jobs, and let's say out of that 40, you get 20 offers, but you're waiting for that perfect just like this has got to be the perfect scenario for you. And again, that may exist, but if you end up being so choosy that you end up not executing, and if you're truly not happy in your current situation, that may not be ideal either. You could be passing up a lot of things because you're kind of waffling back and forth and looking for that, that golden opportunity, that perfect opportunity. Now, if you are in a job that you are completely satisfied with and you think you're looking for that perfect job, then fine, that might be appropriate. So again, you have to use a little bit of common sense, but the main theme I'm trying to get across here is let's not take so much time to execute on some of these things that you just end up not doing anything. So let me give an example of this in my life. At a certain point, I wanted to create some kind of like food item. I wanted to basically start up another hobby. So I looked at, I like the taste of beer, I like the taste of wine, and I like the taste of coffee. So I thought it would be neat to look at maybe making either my own beer, wine, or coffee. I just thought it would be a neat idea. So I did some very quick preliminary research, probably like less than an hour. And I looked at what was involved with making beer. And it was like, okay, I think you had to wait a minimum of like 4 weeks for the fermentation process. Like that was the minimum, and a lot of them were even longer, to see how well your beer came out. And then everything that was involved, the space and the mess, and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't like beer that much to go through that entire process. So again, within 45 minutes, I ruled that out. I looked at wine. Obviously, I'm not going to be growing my own grapes, at least, not enough to produce any wine. So grapes would be involved, fermentation process. It was going to be very similar to producing beer. So I kind of ruled that out. And then I looked at coffee roasting. And up until this point, I've consumed lots and lots of coffee. I would just buy my beans roasted already. And I looked at what was involved with roasting, and I realized that it's like a 10 to, at most 15-minute process, but roughly around a 10-minute process. And I really, really like coffee. And sometimes I do get frustrated when I buy my own beans that are already roasted, that it might not be to my roast level. And so that interested me because I thought, wow, this might be something that is viable. So after my preliminary research, I realized that coffee roasting might be for me, or it might be a hobby that I would be interested in getting into. So instead of immediately getting overwhelmed with the process, and just shutting it down right there, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be too hard to do. There's too many things involved. I avoided that. So I said, okay, I'm going to put in some boundaries. I've talked about boundaries in the past, and I'm going to try to figure this out. Is this a path I want to go down? So I ended up creating an Excel spreadsheet. This is not perfect. And with this Excel spreadsheet, I put in a boundary that I did not want to spend more than 2 hours creating and analyzing this thing. Again, I'm trying to avoid paralysis by analysis. I don't want this to take weeks and months to figure out if I'm going to roast coffee. And again, there's no urgency to this, but I kind of want to move on once I've decided that I may look into this. So I created this quick Excel spreadsheet, and I just wanted to get an idea. Two main things I was worried about: cost. Right? How much is this going to cost me? Found out the range could be anywhere from $50. I mean, you can do this really cheap, all the way to $10,000 if you so desire. All right. And you can get pretty good results with like a $300 coffee roasting machine for the equipment. All right. So I found that out. And then the other issue I had was time, like how much time would be involved. So I wrote down some estimates, and I also wanted to know, like, how long would I have to stay with this? Like, let's say I don't like it. How long would I have to stay with this to kind of break even versus buying coffee beans already roasted? And so what I found out was if you buy a pound of coffee beans that are roasted, and you know, I was getting single bean origin, and I won't get into it in this video, but basically that's a lot more expensive than getting roasted from Dunkin' Donuts whole bean. All right, so I was getting higher end roasted coffee beans. So on average, I would say it cost, let's say, $20 a pound. You know, I can get green beans for anywhere from $6 to $10 a pound, and less than that if you buy in bulk. So basically half the cost. And so basically I figured out that even with the coffee roaster equipment, which was around, it was less than $300, and the green beans, like I would be able to basically break even from this in about a year. All right, so fine. After a year, I decided, if I don't like it, then it's like, it's not a big deal. Like I broke even with this. All right. And then the next thing was time. How much time was this going to take? And, you know, retrospectively, as I look at this, I was a little bit off with the time. I was correct with how long it takes to roast. It's around 10 to 12 minutes with the cooling cycle per roast. But then you got to wait 30 minutes for the machine to cool down before you can roast again. That's not a huge deal because I can go do other things. But there's a setup time. It's about 10 minutes probably to set get everything out of the basement, set it all up. And then there's maybe like a 10 or 15 minute like tear down time because I got to wash things and clean up after that. All right. And so I wasn't perfect with this Excel spreadsheet. That's what I'm trying to say, but I was close enough, and it gave me a good idea that, yeah, I want to pursue this. Okay, great. So I decided I want to pursue this. Again, in my situation, you know, I could say like, okay, I want to start coffee roasting within the year. All right. I mean, again, that is a viable thing as long as you know why you're waiting that long. One thing that would be an example of paralysis by analysis, if I decided, hey, I want to get into coffee roasting, but you know what? Ooh, I'm going to read like 12 books on coffee roasting before I do it. So once I get through these 12 books, which will probably take me 5 years, that's when I'm going to start coffee roasting. So that, I think, would be a perfect example of paralysis by analysis, because, you know, at that point, like, worst thing that's, well, something that could happen from roasting is you could catch the roaster on fire. All right, and I don't want to minimize that, but you know, as long as you spend the 15 minutes figuring out how to avoid that, once you figure that out, all right, and you have a fire extinguisher on hand just in case, then at that point, like, you just, the worst that is going to happen is you're going to produce some coffee beans that are roasted that are terrible. Like that's it. So as long as you avoid the fire problem, which again, I don't want to minimize it, but it is fair. Like, you're going to start seeing smoke and billows of smoke. There will be a warning before that happens, most likely. You know, the worst case is you're going to create some roasted coffee beans that just absolutely taste terrible. At a certain point, you're going to have to gain that experience. You could read all 12 books, but that's still not going to stop you from potentially producing terrible coffee. So, you know, instead of being paralyzed by that and reading all 12 books, do what I did. You're going to immediately start executing on purchasing the equipment. That's what I did. I decided, hey, this is something I want to do. Great. I'm going to immediately get a roaster. This is my budget, and I'm going to start getting some green beans. And while I try my first roast or two, I'm also going to be reading a book on it. So I can do those together, because one of the best ways to figure out how you want to roast, what your style is by actually doing it. You have to do it. So, you know, I think it's important to recognize these things and to avoid this paralysis if it's something that you genuinely want to do. So at a certain point, you just have to recognize that you have to you have to gain experience by actually doing it. You know, as long as you have that in the back of your mind, hopefully you'll be able to avoid some of this paralysis, and you'll be able to start doing things that you like without, you know, feeling overwhelmed about, oh my gosh, this is really, really complex to get up and started. And you can start figuring out and just doing some of these things that you may be interested in. Now, I will say for me, coffee roasting, I've absolutely loved it. I'll probably talk about this later in future videos. There have been times where, like, I haven't been able to get to it. That's been okay, just because of life events. But overall, I really, really like it. I am super happy with my decision of trying out roasting for myself, and it's been largely successful. Again, I'm not saying that that will be true for all of your situations, but you know, if you can strategically try to think through a project or a hobby or a career, like whatever you're looking to achieve, think through it in stages and try to set, you know, healthy boundaries and timelines within this framework, you'll be better off. And you know, above all, you want to try to avoid this paralysis where you never get anything done. So that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. I've rambled on long enough. As usual, love to ramble. Hope you found this helpful, and thanks for watching.